Yeah. What's that store that all the girls go to?
Hot Topic?
No.
Victoria's Secret.
No, it's
Victoria has no secrets.
It's a craft store.
Michael's, Joann's, Hobby Lobby.
Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby did a year where they were just selling twigs, sticks of
Did you build your own kit
of unharvested cotton.
I like it with the thorns.
Yeah, with the thorns and everything, and people were buying that shit to decorate their house.
It's like straw. Have you seen the little mini bales of straw they sell at all the craft stores?
Yep.
People are like, I need straw for my animals, and they're like, oh, you can go to the fireworks store. She's getting like $10 a bale for straw.
Man, that's a lot.
We were talking about eggs, or what episode are we on?
Oh, this is
9.
Are you sure? Because the one you just loaded says 7.
We have one that's loading today.
Oh, okay, good. I thought I caught you slipping.
Yeah, 9.
All right, Pulling the Thread podcast, Scully and John and Scully. Episode Nuevo, 9.
I'm getting better at that.
You are?
So.
Shit, I think my memory's slipping. Like I got
you were going to the fireworks store to buy hay.
I got long-term memory, but I don't remember shit like 5 seconds from now.
Yeah, that's why
it always comes back to me in like 5 minutes.
That's why, that's why everybody at SOE had a nickname. It's not because I wanted to give people nicknames. It's because I couldn't remember anybody's fucking name. So
I don't want to know their name for at least 90 days.
Yeah, 90 days is probably out there. But yeah, that's why everybody had a nickname, because short-term memory is gone.
6 months is more realistic.
Yeah, short-term memory was gone with all that.
So the fireworks. So we were talking about eggs. Somebody had said, I bought a dozen eggs and it was $8 a dozen. I'm like, yeah, $8 a dozen. It's almost worth me dealing with the public to sell eggs.
Right.
But you've always got these crazy women out, these old ladies, that they don't know what feed costs, right? They've never broke it down. At $2 a dozen for eggs, you can't feed your chickens for $2 a dozen on eggs. Like, it costs more to raise them and take care of them. So there's all these women selling eggs, and the local. We should just do a podcast about the fucking local Camden group and the local Walmart. But it's on its own podcast,
right?
And there are always people like, who has eggs, and there's always somebody's like $8 a dozen, $9 a dozen, and there's always, it's going to be good because there's 100 comments on the thread, and they're like, I wouldn't pay that, and she's like, no, of course you wouldn't, because they're sold out. I don't have any to sell you. And there's always little granny selling them for $2 a dozen. And I was telling Pierre that. He goes, that just means we buy them all at $2 a dozen. I go, yeah, but then I got to go pick it. He goes, no, you just pay her $2 a dozen to throw them away, just so that there is no $2 a dozen eggs on the market. Or hire somebody to send them around and buy all the $2, $3, $4 a dozen and repackage them. That's it.
SOE brand them.
That's what Bill said. Bill Lester's like, I bought $2 a dozen eggs and we sold them for $6 a dozen. We bought them from the dude next door.
Yeah, you buy the $2. You don't do anything. You buy the $2 dozen eggs. You repackage them in some tofu-looking packaging, and then you go to Nashville to the farmer's market, and you sell them for $10 a dozen.
They'll kill you over it. The fucking egg mafia.
I mean, they might, but they got to find out. That's why
it'll be because you fucking somehow breached cottage food laws. So they'll sell. This is real. They'll send the FDA SWAT team to your house. So the FDA, Food Drug Administration, they actually raided another Amish farmer who was selling raw milk.
When are the Amish going to rise up?
So this dude, like, he'd been to court a couple of times. He was slated to go to court for sentencing. Like, he was going to prison. And the story got out there big enough. Some famous internet lawyer took his case, and he's like, look, man. And this is him talking after the fact. They were going to fine him $350,000, which he could not pay. So they were going to have to,
that's a lie.
Vacate the farm. Oh yeah, maybe it's a lie.
That's
I don't
a lie.
Know.
They have that money.
They were going to vacate. They'll have to lose the farm. He's going to prison for years, whatever. And the dude gets in there, files some injunctions. It all stops. They end up having to pay $3,000 or something. And he's like, the Food and Drug Administration has no charter to do what they're doing. They're just letting them do this and are using them as a weapon, against these people on behalf of big food or big pharmacy. And he's like, the Food and Drug Administration's charter is really just because back in the 30s, you would buy a can of green beans and there'd be fucking Spam in there, or it'd be something, right. The labeling, right? That's the only charter they have is the labeling. And it was so that when you would buy a drug and thought you were buying aspirin, it wasn't full of fucking cocaine or laudanum.
Right.
It was literally about labeling, but they've become this entity, and they govern themselves for the most part. And there's people in there that if you go catch a trout, you have to you're not allowed to prepare your own trout, right? It's just insane, the level of bureaucracy.
Yeah. And the crazy part about it, when you think about when you think about an Amish going after an Amish, let's just say that he's a full-on Amish grocer, right? What is the reach that Amish person has? 100 people? 200 people?
Yeah, I think it's
400 people.
I think his customer base was actually 400.
Yeah, let's say it's 400 people. In the scheme of food in this country, that's not even for example, we'll just use milk, right? If he was supplying 10 gallons of milk to every one of those people a month, the milk, the milk mafia would not even notice that was happening. Like they wouldn't wake up one day and be like, "Hey, how come none of our milk is selling?" Oh, that guy in Pennsylvania who's selling milk out of his garage, he's killing us. It's bullshit. What happened? I guarantee you.
Tell him what it's about then.
Well, I guarantee you this is exactly what happened. What happened is some Karen on the outside saw what was going on and went, I don't think they should be allowed to do that, and reported it to the FDA. And then the FDA is like, okay, well, what can we do? Is there money to be made here? Because the reality is all those federal agencies, the only thing they're doing is they're shifting money around for their own budgets.
So the other side to this is, it's not about the Amish guy. It's about the next 100 dudes who are going to come into this and use the loopholes and tell them to fuck off and not do their fucking taxes. Not their taxes, but not pay the fee to play.
You do run the risk. You do run the risk that regular folks will be like, hey, why don't I just have my own cow, right? Why don't I have my own chicken? And it was recently, they did a study in Denmark where in this town they were like, hey, we're going to give away free chickens. Each household can have 3 chickens.
This was recent.
Yeah, recent. Each household can have 3 chickens. I think the number was pretty low on how many people actually got chickens, but it decimated the corporate egg market in that they were producing so many eggs that they were giving eggs away.
Yep.
And the corporate egg market was like, yeah, you need to kill all those chickens. So yeah, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take a lot for you to be independent from the government. Like, it really doesn't take a lot. Small, like, the reality is, even like our houses in San Diego, right? Our houses in San Diego, no problem. You could have 3 chickens in your backyard. No problem. Could you have turned your front yard and your backyard into a garden and grown your own stuff, right? And then if you think a neighborhood, like you're in a cul-de-sac, who's to say that, the neighborhood has 3 cows, and you provide those cows with clippings from your garden, and in return, the guys that actually are holding the cows bring you milk, right? And you just created a scenario where corporate America is going to fucking lose its shit and burn your whole neighborhood down to the ground. And it doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't take a lot to get away from them.
The best form of rebellion is independency.
Yes, and that is why it's another reason why they love forcing you into the city. They want you in the city because you don't have any ability to be independent.
So we talk about Agenda 21, right? And everybody used to make fun of it, and it was kind of like the tinfoil hat shit. Every single fucking thing in Agenda 21 came to pass, and now they're openly talking about Agenda 2030, 2035. And everybody made fun of Alex Jones about that. But if you go back to the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, there are old-time videos of dudes saying, they don't want you out here in the boonies. They want to push you into the coastal states, and that's by design. And that leads right into the 15-minute cities and the smart cities. Smart cities are actually an acronym. I don't recall what it was. I remember I saw it again last night, as a matter of fact, and that's why I'm talking about it right now. But the smart, it's all some dystopian fucking crazy wacko shit.
I mean, you will recognize this. Most people don't recognize this. But when you think about smart cities, right? And they say, hey, sleep, eat, work,
All within
all in the same place.
Yeah.
What else is that called? Does anybody know what else they call that?
prison.
Yeah, prison. It's just a prison. It's to keep you centrally located where they can keep a fucking eye on you and they can tell you what to do, when to do, and how to do it.
So I've been saying I've been saying that the last 3 years, right? And that's what they want, because when you work and you entertain and you educate and everything happens all within that 1 mile, that's walkable, right? So
Yeah.
now you don't need a car, right?
You don't need a car.
And now we can control your movement. And when you look at big cities, do you remember the sound abatement walls when you're going through the freeways and stuff in California, right? Those walls are 20 feet tall now. Like you could literally flood the interstate. And when you look at those walls now that we have drones and shit and you're just flying around and you notice now those walls encompass entire neighborhoods. You can literally, they have one point of egress and they can completely lock down movement. Now, 15-minute cities. This is actually happening right now in the United Kingdom. They are talking about 15-minute cities. They've taken cities and they've divided them into 15-minute zones. You're only allowed to drive 15 minutes from where you reside. You can travel 15 minutes in I believe it's a circle, right? You can get a waiver to leave 100 times a year. You can only travel out of that 15 minutes, so your family lives wherever. You can get this thing, and then they start taxing you, and it's all tied into the social credit score.
Which is another example of this is not for the elite.
No.
If there's a tax or if you can get a waiver, it means you can pay for it, and if you can pay for it, then you get to do whatever you want to do while the serfs have to stay in the fields plowing and harvesting corn for their corn festival rituals that they're going to be doing at the uber rich castles in the sky.
Now, if you want to see these videos I'm talking about, if you hit me up, I'll send them to you through Instagram. Hit me up on Instagram if you're there. There's a dude on here, Otto Sear. And I'm talking to him, and it turns out he's actually in Canada. And he's like, yeah, you got to keep your guns, man. You have to stay armed. This is the plan. And I go, yeah, if you want to see what's about to happen in the United States, watch Australia and Canada. And he's like, yeah, I'm in Canada, bro. And I didn't know that, but he's got a good Instagram page. There's another one called Dr. Snake Handler. I think that's what his deal is. But they're always posting videos of this shit, and it's always from media. Like, it's out there public, but your media is not making you aware that this is happening. And this shit is taking effect right the fuck now.
I think that that agenda, the globalist agenda, was always like a long-term plan. That they have these long-term plans on how to continue to be
it's generational. They're putting things in play right now that they will never see come to fruition.
But I think the problem that they have now is I believe that the people who are, they're actually pulling the strings, they're not concerned about generational. I think they want it to happen in their lifetime, and that's why they're going ape shit and doing all this stuff. The only problem about doing it in your lifetime is there's still institutional memory of what it's like to be free, and you end up having the situations like you have right now where, San Bernardino County is trying to secede to Nevada, Eastern Washington's trying to secede from they're trying to. You're creating a situation where there's going to be a friction point. Like another example is Alberta, Canada. Alberta, Canada just told
to fuck off.
Fuck off.
A bunch of Canada.
Fuck off. We're not giving up our guns. You can suck it. And what does the people in power? Their only play is to become even more draconian to try and rein these people in. But because they haven't allowed that institutional memory to die, meaning they've, 10 more years from now, we probably won't even know what transgenderism is. So once that institutional memory dies, it's much easier for people to go, well, why would I need a car? I don't really need a car because
they're doing it now.
Yeah, because I don't know what the country looks like anyways.
Look at how many people they got to buy into the electric cars.
The electric car, truthfully, I know, again, I'm not anti-electric anything, but the electric car is going to be the plastic bag of this generation.
I love it. I keep hearing you say that.
It's going to be the plastic bag of this generation. One day they're going to look and be like, holy shit, these fucking cars are really hurting our gooch.
Do you think maybe transgender right now is just the modern day version of goth? Back in the 90s, right? You saw these misunderstood kids, right? They're wearing black makeup and they're dressing up like the Crow or whatever, right? Just really out there, right? Club kids and big weird clothes and shit. Except they've convinced these children, or they're actually doing it to these children. It's not reversible when you cut your fucking pecker off.
No, it is not reversible.
When you castrate these children, and look at how many transgenders are detransitioning now. Right?
Even if you don't castrate, even if you just hormone dose, you are destroying yourself. So meaning if you're taking hormones to transition to be transgender, and then you change your mind for some reason, whatever that reason may be, you don't go back. Like, yes, you can artificially take testosterone to help yourself, but you will never be the person that you would have been if you wouldn't have done that at all. I think there's two things. I think there's two things going on, and they're both environmental. You have generations since the 50s of men who are losing testosterone at a extremely
exponentially every
rate.
decade.
Yeah, every decade. Like if you were a male, a breeding male right now, your child's son will not have the same testosterone that you have as an old dude. So there's forces within our environment that are reducing testosterone in men. Probably what's that shit that
estrogen,
but
microplastics.
What's the thing that we're growing all through Tennessee? That little bush. Soybeans and everything, and soybean has estrogen.
Yeah.
And so soybean, if you take a look, is in every food you have because it's an easy growable crop within the United States. And so corporations are making lots and lots of money figuring out how to put soy in everything, and that could be part of the cause.
Bigger piece to that. All your soy, all your corn,
and then
Monsanto, it's all Roundup.
Yeah.
They literally spray it and the wheat.
Yeah.
Literally day to 2 days before harvest, they now spray again. They fucking run the crop crawler thing out there and spray it with Roundup. So when it harvests, you're getting Roundup. They don't rinse that. They don't leach it out.
Well, I mean, the reality is when you think of Monsanto, those corns are
Agent Orange.
They're engineered to have Roundup already in them.
Yes.
And then the other thing I think with the explosion of what's going on right now is, the reality is when you're a teenager, you're looking for praise. You're looking to be accepted. You're looking for to get high fives. And
it's the modern day goth.
Yeah, and the high fives that they're getting right now is everybody talking about, oh, you're so cool for coming out. You're so great for pretending to be something you're not. So I think that's the problem, is there's a cheering section for it, and again, it's going to end up being like the plastic bag. Right now, everybody's all fine with it, but 15 years down the road, when we have to pay the price for what we are doing to our children right now, it is going to be a serious problem. I mean, the reality is, if you think about all the school shootings, shooters,
SSRIs,
SSRIs, single family parent homes, males that have been taught that it's okay to be, it's okay not to be manly. Those people are acting out. They are acting out in a way that is dangerous.
They all look like the character from.
The reality is,
put the lotion in the basket.
The reality is, the current place that we're in the United States it's a nanny state. We have allowed women to make very important decisions that affect the entire country, and you can't. It's not that you can't do that, and it's not that women aren't important, but it's a two-system household. You have to have the man's version of that to make sure that it's the right thing to do, because they're going to think they're going to do everything based off emotions, and men don't think that way. So it's going to be crazy. And in 20 years, it will be interesting to see what it looks like. And it's not going to be, I hate to tell you this, liberals, it's not going to be the fucking green utopia that you think it is. It's going to be a hellscape, because the reality is all your solar panels are coming to fruition. They can't be recycled. So they're all going to go in the fucking dump. Your windmills don't really produce the energy that you think they do. You're going to, at 20 years, your Ford Lightning that you bought is not going to run anymore because the batteries won't cycle. And then you're going to go, hey, how about we get this fixed? And Ford's going to be like, it's just as much if you buy a new car.
That's what Tesla's saying.
Yeah. So it's going to be a hellscape. It's going to be a hellscape of green ideas that totally failed.
But it's more permanent. It's way more permanent, right? The kid thing. There are women who have become men. There are men who have become women.
Yes.
They believe they were born in the wrong body, whatever. That's not who we're talking about. That's not what we're discussing here. We are discussing young kids who are in a fucking club, and the only thing that they're accepted to happens to be that. And they all have influence from adults, right? Adults don't ever nobody wants to be the only dude that's like, yeah, fuck that guy. We're going to go and we're going to march at the courthouse. We're going to hold signs. Nobody wants to do that shit by themselves. When you see one dude doing that, that's the crazy guy.
Yeah.
He's usually right. Like some asteroids are coming, or the portals open and the demons. You always see him in the movies. When he's by himself, he's nuts. Nobody wants to be nuts by themselves. So they want to recruit a bunch of people. And when you get in these chat boards and you get on social media and stuff, and you start unraveling this stuff, these groups of kids this is their thing, right? And it doesn't become something they do, it becomes something they are. And it's all led by, there's always adults there, right?
Yeah.
So grooming, right? That's what they called it, was grooming. Now you're not allowed to say grooming. You cannot say the word. I'm watching all these videos about.
Did we just get demonetized?
We've never been
man.
monetized. You're not allowed to say rape.
Let me do this real quick.
Have you guys noticed when they're reporting, even the news, like when independent news places are reporting about rapists, they cannot say the word rape. He raped this person. You can't say that. It automatically loses your monetization. Why is that? Like, you can't say trans, you can't say vac. Oh shit! Now they're probably coming to the house too.
We're a kinder, gentler place, John. We don't need to exploit the rapist.
So the demasculinization, right, and the men losing testosterone and stuff. There's several tests that show that, right? And one of them is grip strength. Rogan had some dude on. They were talking about the length of the taint has shrank. Yeah, it's become shorter and shorter.
And with that, penis size too.
Penis size.
So you're all turning into women.
So what's the hope? What's the solution?
There's no solution. There's only two things. You can hope that the rest of the world is being affected by all this environmental bullshit the same way that we are. But there's no hope. It has to work its course. It's going to work its course where you're going to have, I don't know, five guys that grew up in Nebraska doing hard work and eating the right foods are going to have all the women.
Yes.
To include, they'll have all the women and they'll have all the boys with the small taints and the small penises, because they'll have the most testosterone and they'll be running the world.
Have you seen them attacking Jordan Peterson this week?
Ah, man, I don't know. No, I didn't see it, but they're always going after Jordan.
Okay, so
it's like
the governing body of psychology, or whoever the fuck that is in Canada, has come out and said that they're going to pull Jordan Peterson's license to practice if he does not agree to take a re-education. That's actually the word, a re-education, 6-month re-education. It almost sounded like they wanted him to actually check in. I don't think it's just an online program.
Probably.
To be nicer on social media.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck, Canada.
So
Jordan Peterson is not, but the reality is Jordan Peterson is not making any money from psychology.
Correct.
So good luck, Canada. You can suck it. What are you going to do? You're going to take his shingle? The reality is what we have learned over the last, 5 years, that shingle that you got from fucking Midwest University doesn't mean shit. Doesn't mean shit. Like, the reality is, even if you discredited Jordan Peterson, right? If you said, oh, he doesn't know nothing about psychology, we're taking all that back. First off, it's moronic because you can't take knowledge back. It's not something, you don't deprogram him and be like, oh, sorry, you don't have an education anymore. He still has the education. And I promise you, if Jordan Peterson set up shop somewhere and said, hey, you know what? I'm getting out of the internet game. I'm going to get off social media. I'm just going to go back to my roots and start doing psychology. He would have no problem getting patients. And no one's going to come in there and go, oh, my God, didn't Canada discredit you? Canada is a fucking socialist hellscape. It's a socialist hellscape. They are on the verge of their own civil war.
Where do you think we are in comparison to Canada or Australia?
We're nowhere.
Scale of 1 to 100.
I mean, is 100 the worst? Is 100 close?
Yes.
So I would say we're probably still in the 40s.
Really?
Yeah, we're still in the 40s. The truth of the matter is this, okay? The only reason why Canada and Australia have been able to get away with the things that they have gotten away with is because of subjugation of their people. Their people are subjugated.
Their people.
They're subjugated, and they were allowed to disarm them. The Canadians, the truth of the matter is the Canadians and the Australians do not have constitutions. They don't have the proper courts that are going to back them up. They are subjects of the crown, period. I mean, again, they're not part of England anymore, but well, Canada is kind of, but what I'm saying is they're subject to the leadership of that country. And so as subjects, they do what they're told. America has never been like that. And so it's very hard. I mean, think about it. Even during the worst part of the pandemic, when like Los Angeles was on lockdown, New York City was on lockdown, most of the rest of the country was just doing the fuck what it wanted. Like, I mean, even you think about New York City, they're all fucking on lockdown and, oh my God, everybody's going to die. Where did all those New York representatives go when they wanted to vacation? They went to Florida. They went to the state that wasn't locked down.
What's her name?
Yeah,
OAC.
OAC.
Was in Florida.
It's not just her. I mean, it wasn't just her. There were plenty of lock the city down Democrats that were in Florida vacationing during COVID. So, I mean, that's the thing about this country. We rely on the sheeple, right? So when the government's like, lock it down, they really don't have to put troops on the corner. Because there's a bunch of sheeple that are going to be like, I'm staying in my house. I'm never going outside. The government says.
Not only that, they'll be willing to tell on the others.
Yeah, they're willing to tell on the others. And if unfortunately, if you lived in, Los Angeles County or New York City, yes, your movements are restricted. But again, you also still could have got in your car and drove to fucking Nebraska and partied like it was 1999. I mean, you could have left. Where if you're stuck in Australia, the entire country was locked down. If you're in Canada, the entire country is locked down. It's not like you can get in your car and drive away because, you have the fear of getting to Nebraska and the Nebraska police arresting you because you're a New York citizen. That hasn't happened here yet.
Look how many people did leave. I mean, they just packed their shit up. Like it was $1,000. Like I could rent a U-Haul trailer right now for $1,000 and take it to California. But if you're in California and you want a U-Haul trailer,
fuck no,
$5,000.
Yeah, you can't.
They don't have one.
They don't have them.
People were buying them. Like you could have, and I don't know about now, but you could have just bought up fucking used trailers here. Like just hillbilly it, put up a bunch of used trailer, put them on a giant ass trailer, fucking take the wheels off, stack them up, take them into California, list them, and just fucking sell them. You could have pre-sold those things.
Yes.
And I didn't even think about that. You could have made a killing doing that.
I mean, just think about, going to Texas and driving trucks back. Yeah. You would have made a killing because they didn't even have people that drive trucks back. So the trucks were just sitting places. That's the cool thing about America is you can always slide to the other side. The sad thing about America is the political system that puts that in place does not have to suffer the outcome. Meaning,
Right.
really, the reality is Mayor Giuliani was never fucking locked down. Those guys were never on lockdown. They were still going to the gym. They were still doing all the
Nancy
shit
Pelosi
that they know.
getting her haircut. Beetlejuice was
They
out
were all
there
still
fucking
doing the same
nightclubbing.
thing, but they had no problem telling you couldn't go you couldn't leave your house. And that's the bullshit part. Like, if you want to walk the walk, then if you want to talk the talk, you need to walk the walk.
And you don't think there's any hope?
No, I don't think there's any hope.
You
Because
don't-
it's
Do you not think that if we have these conversations with people, right? We get together in small groups, we have these conversations, we put this content out, we have these conversations. Maybe this is by design so that they tell you one thing, because 90% of the people get their news from CNN, right? Why do you have so many black folks right now walking around, like literally everywhere you go? Not all black people, but most of the people wearing blacks are colored people, right? Is it worse for them? It did seem to be worse for them, but was it worse for them because they were black, or was it worse for them because they were higher percentage out of shape, right? I mean, the white folks, we got plenty of fucking of our own, right?
as far as COVID?
Yes.
COVID?
But you still see them out there because they're scared, because most of them, not all of them, but the majority of them do get their news just from CNN, right? Just everybody, whether you're white or black, whatever. But they want you to believe that you are the minority, right? When you have these thoughts like, this is insane. Yeah, I'm not going to do this. I'm not turning shit in.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to have some chickens. Fuck you.
It's easier.
They want you to believe that everybody else on your fucking 2 streets over and around you, city blocks, aren't having the same thoughts.
That's why
That you thought police yourself.
that's why Joe Rogan was so dangerous.
Yes.
Because it's easier to sway people to a certain idea if they're isolated. So if I isolate you and then say, "Hey man, the moon is made of cheese." If I isolate you long enough, you're going to be like, "Hell yeah, it's made of cheese. It's the cheesiest cheese ever." And then if you are, if you're with a group of 100 people that have been isolated the same way, they're all going to come out and be like, "You're fucking crazy to think that the moon's not made out of cheese."
Well, Donald Trump, Alex Jones, Joe Rogan, Tate, right? They're just fucking knocking them down one by one by one by one, right? Jordan Peterson.
Did you see that interview,
Which interview?
Tate?
I saw several.
After they got out of jail?
I've seen several.
Did you see the one where
They have just made this motherfucker, like whatever they were worried about, he is so fucking viral, they cannot fucking get rid of him right now. He is. You turn on any social media, 75% of the content is Tate.
I am wondering what the government, I'm wondering what they said to him when they had him in custody. Because if you watch the first interview that they did, where his brother is explaining what happened, like his brother's like, "Yeah, this bitch here, blah, blah, blah." He's explaining what happened. And you look at Tate is like, he has that look on his face, like
he's
I am
broken?
not going to say a goddamn thing. Like I feel like,
yeah, his cousin was out there too saying a lot of stuff.
I feel like they didn't give a shit about his brother because his brother's not really the persona Tate is. And so they didn't put the heat on his brother, and they put something on Tate because he is really holding back. I don't know if that's just, the reality is that could be his lawyer saying, "Keep your mouth shut till this is all taken care of." But
I saw some stuff his brother was putting out, and his brother's stuff was
his fucking brother looks
way more energetic and more powerful, right?
His
like,
brother
I do see
is
it.
fucking on
if
point.
If you look at Tim Pool used to say stuff, right? And you're like, yeah, I like the things this guy's saying. Yes, he is speaking the what I believe to be the truth, right? Tim Pool is so fucking reined in now, and he called, I'm the milquetoast fence sitter. No, your ass got fucking. You're making $1 million. You're making over $1 million on your YouTube, just on your YouTube right now, $1 million, and that has changed you. That was your price. Everybody has a price. That was his price. That's a good question, man. What did happen to Tate? And then at the same time, like Alex Jones said, Morgan Stanley is allowing these pedophiles to remain banked, right? And they're working out of the Virgin Islands. Well, they just launched this whole investigation over Morgan Stanley, over them allowing Epstein to have all these funds and everything. And as soon as she launches this investigation, lo and behold, fucking Biden, travels over there, she is fucking terminated. She is no longer employed.
So imagine that the U.S. government is the highest level of the federal government. The highest level. I mean, once you think about that for a minute, the highest level of the federal government
that you know of
is protecting Epstein's client list.
That's another good point, right? So, okay, human trafficking. If he's doing it, fucking get him. But you haven't shown any proof. You keep parading this video out of him fucking slapping and choking this chick. That chick's his ex-girlfriend. She's like, I can't believe I have to come out now a third time, 2 years after I already did this, and say that that's what I was into. I'm not with Tate. That I'm his ex-girlfriend. I'm not even with him, and here I am protecting him, standing up for him again. I should be the angry spouse or the angry ex, and that's not the case. You guys keep coming up with this over and over and over and over. And today, the new one out right now is that Andrew Tate is supported by the Taliban, because the Taliban says that, yes, the United States is too feminist, and they are supporting Tate, and they are worried about Tate's well-being while in custody. And they then, in the same fucking paragraph, link it to the botched withdrawal is because of Donald Trump. Like, they have all three of them in the same paragraph.
Imagine, like, the character that Tate is, the lifestyle that Tate lives. In no way, shape, or form does that intersect anywhere with the Taliban. Like, no, they're not going to be, like, even if Tate was like, fuck America, America sucks, the Taliban would not be behind him going, yeah. They wouldn't be like, yeah, hanging out with Tate.
So think about this, right? So they're knocking all these guys down one at a time.
Yeah.
You would have thought they could never take down a sitting president, right? You could never silence, you could never deplatform, never fucking happen. Okay, so you get number one, and then you go after Peterson, and then you go after Tate, and you knock these dudes down. Do you know what that means? That means that you and I, and all of the fucking people we interact with and fucking do business with, what are we, 36 months downstream from them? What is it really, 24 months maybe?
I mean, maybe.
This is one of those times when you're seeing this shit happen and you're not acting because it wasn't you.
Hey.
I was just doing my job.
I know, but what I'm going to say right now could change the course of this podcast. If you're a special agent in one of the 3-letter agencies and you're thinking how you can get into this podcast,
just walk in the door.
I am open to all financial benefits that your corporation has to bestow on me. So if you're thinking, how are we going to get to them? I mean, the reality is it'd be real simple. Just if you're flying your drone over my property, John, just to check and see what's going on, and you see an M1 Abrams out in the field, they got me. They
bought you with the Abrams?
They did. They got me.
So when they were after me, right? Remember when we used to answer the phone? Special operations equipment, this is not a secure line, ma'am. How may I help you? Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. Some bullshit like that. Our phones beeped and buzzed and cracked. And we had a friend that worked for fucking the phone company. So he'd come in and fucking fix it. They used to have to go down to the fucking city block and change the pairs over.
Did they? Okay.
Our phones were tapped. We used to joke about our phones being tapped. They were fucking tapped. They recorded them.
But what's interesting about that, now that you think about that, and I don't even think, that was a fucking 100 years ago. But in your paperwork, was there ever anything that was said over the phone?
No.
That would be because
never.
I remember that the reality is that the shop. Hey guys, the shop was pretty boring. Like, the reality is, there was a real job there, and John was basically doing the same thing he was doing here, but with less people. So he was working until fucking midnight at night. It was boring, and it usually like 1:30 in the morning. John would be like, "Okay, I'm done sewing all these holsters. Let's go throw chem lights in the street." I mean, that would turn into other things. But man, to the resources that they spent, the resources and money that they spent to investigate something that, I mean, if you think about crime, it was such a waste of money.
Do you think they believed there was real crime?
Oh, I believe they did. I believe they, because what can we say?
What can you not say?
Well, yeah, I believed I believe that they thought you killed somebody,
Who?
one of your girlfriends. Because that was the number one question. They weren't concerned about any military equipment, anything. The first question out of their mouth was, "Where's the girlfriend? Where'd you guys bury her?"
See, they never asked me that. That never came up. My paperwork and everything originated Chris Osmond. Machine guns and explosives.
Chris Osmond, machine guns,
because
explosives.
But they followed us with aircraft 3 times to Las Vegas. They followed us with an airplane and a video camera or whatever camera was in the airplane 3 times, right? When we sat down, when we were out shooting machine guns, right, at SHOT Show, they were there. When we were out at the races, MDR races, they were there. When we were in the hotel at that fucking big-ass steakhouse, fucking Howard Stern, right, they were there. All that shit, they were there for all of that stuff.
But I think how those investigations really work is you get an informant. You get somebody that is willing to tell you something.
They had 3.
Yeah. They get you somebody who's willing to tell you something. And that person tells you something, and I bet this is the way it always works. That person tells you something, and it may be a crime, like it may be some sort of crime, but it's not crime enough to justify the type of investigation they want to do. And so what they do is they're like, "Hey, we understand you're telling us this information. Do you have anybody that will corroborate it?" And so now, I
think it's even beyond that, right? Hey, man, I know you're fucking having to pay that child support right now, Rick Riordan. I know your wife's leaving you. Hey, I know you worked for John. I know you're trying to start your own thing. We can put John away, and if you got anything you can add to this case, man, they'll give you $5,000 right now. I'll bet you they fucking pay those because they're paid informants.
Well, I mean, yeah, if they're paid informants, that's a little bit different.
It's like these motherfuckers donating fucking sperm or plasma or blood.
But I think if they get a sniff, if they get a whiff of something, that they're hoping, the reality is that they're hoping is once they open the door, that they're going to find something else, right? That they're going to find, because,
right.
The reality is if you look at most of those
it's by accident.
low level crimes, I'm not, I don't know anything about mobsters, but if you look at most low level crimes, usually the thing that brought the police there is not the thing they end up getting charged with, which means they're just showing up because they think they think your dog is not on a leash, and then they're like, "Oh, by the way, there's dead hookers in your refrigerator," or whatever. I'm not saying that dead hookers in the refrigerator is not a crime, but it's just you're never charged with the thing that brought them there in the first place. So it's almost like they can make it up. It's crazy that we said just in podcast 8, if the government wants to get you, they're going to get you. And literally the next week they rolled up Tate.
And that's what I'm saying. That when you said
they rolled up Tate,
and now they don't have to tap phone lines, right? They don't have to do any of that shit. They will say kiddie porn. They'll say child pornography. And what are they saying about Tate? They're saying rape, and they're saying trafficking, rape, and there was something else. Two women, right?
Yeah.
They haven't produced them. I mean, maybe they have. I don't know. But what I was going to say when we started talking about all that, I'm like, ATF agent, FBI guy, if you want to come here, just walk in. Like, you guys, they were at my birthday party at Claim Jumper. We had the whole fucking back section. There's probably 50 people there. And when we walked in, there was 2 ATF guys in the lobby in ATF jackets. I walked up to them and said, "Hey, I own a company, Special Operations Equipment. Where are you guys from? I don't recognize you. We build gear for all of San Diego sector. We build gear for all of your LA guys. Here's my card." Those guys were working. That was part of the investigation. Those dudes came in my shop a week later asking about night vision and stuff. And I told them, I don't sell night vision. We only sell stuff that we make, the stuff you see here. But my dealer, Light Fighter, in Clarksville, Tennessee, they carry Lit and Varo and ITT. They took that and opened an investigation on Light Fighter for stolen night vision, selling stolen night vision. They didn't have any stolen night vision, but that's one more fucking piece that they go after those guys.
The criminal network. That was the same thing, when I initially when they took me, I was being charged with the theft of weapons from the SOE Armory, right? So
from the SOE?
Yeah.
School of Infantry?
School of SOI Armory. SOI Armory. And so when they got me back, I'm like, first off, I don't have access. It's not like
It's not
I have
even doable.
It's not like I have
doable.
It's not like I have access. So if I don't have access to be able to take weapons, and then I said, how many weapons are missing?
That's what I asked them.
And they're like, well, we don't know if any weapons are. I go, then how am I here? And then the next thing was I think that's what they were trying to scare me with, was weapons missing from the SOI armory. And then the next question was, where's the dead?
See, I never got asked
Where's the dead girlfriend? And I was like, I know all of John's girlfriends, and they're all still alive. And they're like, well, how do you know for sure? I go, just.
Let me put it this way.
Yeah, I was like, let me tell you this. John would have called me and said, hey, we got to go to the desert. We haven't gone to the desert. And I know all his girlfriends. I go, one was life flighted.
Because of
injury.
me.
Just for an injury. She was life flighted for an injury, but I go, I know she's still alive. I've seen her. So, it was just, I think you get to a point in investigation. I think they get to a point in investigation where it comes to an end, where they just have to throw the net in and hope that there's something in there that they're going to get. And, again, contrary to what you think, you're not living a perfect life. And, if the federal government wants to charge you with something, they're going to charge you with it. The fruition at the end is, at the end of all the people that they charge with crimes, again, total waste of money.
Dude, I just heard that less than 10% of murders are solved.
I don't know if I know like right now, if you want to commit a homicide, the best place to do it is in Detroit. That they only solve 1 out of 10 murders, which is 10%. Same thing, 10%. But Detroit is the worst. Like they don't even. And I believe that the only reason why they solved that one murder case is because they roll up John and you go, oh yeah, I saw Scully shoot that motherfucker, right? It's not like they're out on the street.
Or they're ballistics. The dude's carrying the same fucking gun.
It's not like they're out on the streets collecting clues, doing fingerprints. I mean, it's the worst place in the world anyways.
So I want to hit Detroit, right? And do all the abandoned buildings.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Great ones. But there's like some real fucking animals living in them places, right? And when I do abandoned building, I'm usually with Amanda, who's usually I'm like, not anymore. Like we were going to hit up the old stadium in Nashville and we knew there was people there. I'm in a fucking Porsche Panamera. Where the fuck am I going to park it where somebody doesn't see me get out of it? Then she's got a fucking $5,000 I'm like, Amanda.
Well, okay. You guys got to dress down for your
right. And that's missions. When I'm like, hey, we got to do this thing, right? But it's got to be planned out.
Yeah.
So it's that women in combat thing. Men will do things because there are women that they wouldn't put themselves at risk because there's not a woman there. You know, that's what the thought that was in my head with that. But going back to when they had you held in captivity there, I was not arrested. Right. So they raid my shop. They raid my apartment, my 3 garages behind the shop, my 3 garages at the apartment. They hit Brett's house. They hit his business. Yeah. They hit Las Vegas. There was a bunch of other places
everything is so much more legal in Las Vegas too.
Dude, there was like 20 other places hit. I didn't have a fucking clue who they are. I still to this day don't know what it had to do anything with us. So they let me go. They write out this yellow carbon copy. Dude, they took 12 pages of shit. They gave me 1 page, right? And there was no chain of custody for the shit from the house. Right. So Vince, our boy Vince, bail bonds guy, he gets a hold of me like immediately. And he's like, hey, you need a real fucking attorney. This is the dude, right? So I go get this attorney and he's like, it's going to be $20,000. I'm like, I'll bring you $5,000 right now, right? So I come in and we sit down we walk through his office. And he calls, like he's got a phone number. Like, I don't know how he even knew how to, maybe I think I had a business card for the head detective or whatever. He calls and he's like, hey, Mr. Willis has retained me. Can we discuss this case? And they're like, unless your client wants to tell us about machine guns or explosives, we don't want to talk to him. So he puts it on mute or covers it or what. I'm like, I don't know shit about machine guns or explosives. He's like, My customer said, my client says he doesn't know anything about machine guns and explosives. They're like, what about the train cars? I'm like, what train car? I don't know shit about train cars. The train cars with the machine guns and the silencers. You guys carry train cars around full of machine guns and silencers? Like, and he's like, my client doesn't know. And the dude fucking hung up. That was the interaction. And then come to find out, if I'd have murdered somebody, this was the dude. This is a state, like gets like homicide shit. Oh, I need a federal fucking attorney, right? So I'm talking to these lawyers. We're going in talking to them, and we get to one, and he's downtown San Diego, like the highest building. And we're in the top floor looking around, and you can see Seaport Village and all that shit. He's like, look, I'm the lawyer you need. He goes, let me tell you why. He goes, because I have the yacht in the Coronado Cays where we'll have all the Christmas parties. And it's my golf course that all the judges that are going to be, you have a chance of having these 3 judges. I play golf with all these guys, and they're at all my Christmas parties. So his wife was, Gretchen Von Helms was his wife, and she was on CNN. Jan Ronis was my actual real attorney, and he was on CNN. And he's like, I'm like, look, man, this is why I had these things. There's no crime with any of these things. All these guns were registered to my mom. He's like, look, here's the real deal. You might get off on this if you go to trial and you explain all this. They might not convict you. He goes, they're going to go arrest your mom. Yep.
Yeah, that was the thing. It wasn't about what they were there for. It was they cast the net in, they pulled it in, and they're like, okay, these are the things that we think we can get these guys for. But nobody, like, the reality is, first off, they never found any, there was never any, well, they never found any stolen military gear that didn't have Chris Osmond's name on it that they left at the scene anyways because he was confidential informant number 1. The reality is there was never any stolen machine guns. Like, again, train cars?
Yeah.
Train cars?
Yeah.
Who even thinks about train cars? Now,
our machine gun is it even feasible that there is a train car of guns or suppressors that comes onto Camp Pendleton?
I would say that was
just some bullshit.
Some bullshit, because I know how the weapons get distributed. You know, when you're like, for example, you know, the new what is it? The Mark
6.8, 6.5.
No, the new 40 millimeter grenade launcher, 6-barrel, or the drum 40 millimeter grenade launcher.
Garwin or whatever, Arwin.
I took possession of the ones that were delivered to 29 Palms when the Marine Corps first went to those. So I got the first run of those, and I know how machine guns get delivered. They get delivered on a Saturday by a secure courier truck, and the dude literally walks the boxes out, puts them in front of the armory, and says, "Hey, will somebody sign for this?"
And they come from like HK to
yeah. They don't. They're not putting guns on train cars. I mean, what is this? 1942? They're not putting guns on train cars. They have secure couriers that run all that shit all over the place. The only thing you're going to see on a train car is heavy equipment. So, you know, again,
and it's not enclosed.
Yeah, if they would have been like, John Willis, where is the M1 Abrams? He'd had to bite his lip because there's a possibility that it was in my backyard and we were doing donuts and shit in it. So, because that would come off a train car, right? Of fucking machine guns and suppress. It would be interesting, and I don't know how you would be able to do it. Maybe those guys are not in the same position that they were then, and they would actually talk. But it would be interesting to know if there was a credible theft. Like, I doubt if it was train cars. Maybe, you know, because again, if you're going on deployment, if you're a MEU and you're going on deployment, you put your extra weapons in Connex boxes, and those Connex boxes go aboard ship. So maybe there was an actual theft of military weapons, that's what they were looking for. But again, if you know anything about the military, there is not 100% a Connex box, a train car, a fucking room anywhere where there's explosives and guns. And at the time, there was only one group. There was only one fucking group in the Marine Corps that was using suppressors. Now I think how absurd this was. Only one group.
Who?
SOTG.
You guys.
That's it. That's it. And there was 13 suppressors, and those suppressors were locked at range 130.
They weren't even quiet.
No, they weren't quiet. They weren't quiet. But again, those were the only in that time frame in the 90s. They were the only people in the Marine Corps that had suppressors. So
that's true. Because
there couldn't have been
the SEALs didn't even.
Yeah,
have
the SEALs weren't even. I mean, they
That's
had
true,
they had the SD, but they had the MP5 SD, but they weren't running around with MP5s with.
That's
with
true because
suppressors on it.
they didn't get them till I came home.
Yeah.
When
And
I
there
came
were-
home, they were just getting those SR-25s with the suppressors. I remember because I went out to that fucking SWAT challenge thing
Yeah.
they had down by Potrero or wherever by the border, and like 2 of the SEALs were firing those guns, and their suppressors fucking launched downrange.
Yeah. So I mean, it would just be interesting to see like the paperwork that they had to submit in order to start the investigation, because somewhere on there they had to have convinced a federal judge that there was an actual theft. But the problem, again, I'm going to roll back to is bullshit, because there is nowhere on Camp Pendleton. I would almost argue that there's nowhere in the Marine Corps where you can go and find machine guns that aren't secured, like in an armory, with explosives.
Do you remember when we went to SHOT Show the first time?
No, I don't remember first shot.
Do you remember going to Las Vegas? We were going to SHOT Show, and that kid that used to hang out with Strider all the time had that Toyota Tacoma. Remember they stopped him at the border check?
Oh
halfway there?
yeah. I remember that kid.
He was like 2 hours late coming in behind us. They
he was the
stopped him.
boat. He was the welder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember him.
Do you know that was in all the paperwork?
Yeah, his stop. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because all the guns were in his car.
'Cause-
Because I knew I couldn't have I knew I couldn't buy guns, but I was not transporting guns, right? So all the guns were in his fucking truck.
They fucked me up with that.
So they were following when we took off. They were following us in an airplane. That's how they stopped him right there. And when we rolled into Vegas, we were all there and unloaded. And then he showed up and he was just like really askew the whole weekend. It was just kind of off. That I remember that was all in there.
They fucked me up.
So
with,
as far back as that, like
But
2
that-
years prior.
but that little incident at the border checkpoint, they fucked me up with that. Like I got fucked up.
But you were with me.
No. But what I'm saying is, so when they're doing their interrogation, right? They're trying to their big push was straw purchase that they were going to get me.
I had never even heard the term.
Yeah.
Even in court, straw man purchase never came up.
Well, they were trying to that was their big push was we got you for straw purchase, whatever. Blah. I'm like, no, I have never bought a gun for John Willis. Never, not even, never. And they were trying to get me, and they were pushing that, right? Because technically the reality is they were looking for a felony and they didn't have one. And then they pull the paperwork out. They're going through the thing, and they pull this sheet out that has a picture of these guns, right, in the back of a truck. And one of the guns, it's a rifle case. It's opened up.
Galil.
No, it's a fucking Tango 51.
What's that? One of Mike's guns?
Yeah, it's one of Mike's guns, right?
So a sniper rifle.
Yeah. So I see that in the truck, right? And
But it wasn't yours.
Yeah, I had
he
one
owned
too.
one also.
I had one too. And so I'm like, I see that in the truck, and I'm like, holy fucking shit. Did I leave it somewhere? Did I loan it to somebody? Did I leave it somewhere and somehow it's in this truck? Like for a good couple hours, I was like, I'm fucked. Like I am fucked. There's this gun that I have no control over, state of California. It's going out to Nevada. It's I'm like, shit, I'm fucked. They got me. And then they come back and they came back a couple hours later and they're like, we've inventoried all your guns. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, they're all here. I'm like, and that's when I was like, man, they must have had the same fucking, because the Tango 51s, those all green guns. I'm like, they must have had. And then I was thinking, I go, maybe it was Dwayne's rifle, right? I just in my head, I'm throwing all these things out there of where that gun came from. But man, I thought for sure, I was like, when they showed me that picture, I'm like, fuck, I've got a gun I've got an unaccounted gun, one of those unaccounted guns. But I mean, it was a shit show. They really were stretching for everything. Because, like, even when they came to my house and they had me pull all my guns out, right? I have really been collecting guns since I was 18. The minute I could buy my own firearm, I bought it. And it was the AK-47 because that's
Did you
the
own
enemy
any?
of your
Did
weapon.
you have guns before that? Like, did your mom buy you guns?
No guns before that. So
Because she was just so much against it, or do you just?
I don't want to say my mom was against it, but I've always felt like she was against it, even though so every gun that I ever bought and have ever bought has been a legally purchased firearm.
Did you go for your 18th birthday and buy a gun?
I did. I went to the gun shack. Went to the gun shack and I bought a Chinese Type 56 AK-47 folding stock because that's the gun of our enemy, and I bought that. And
How much was it?
Oh my god! I want to say it was like $2.99. It's fucking cheap as shit. I mean, everything's relative. When people say things were cheaper in the 80s and the 90s, we also were getting paid $2.25 an hour. So it was relative. It was expensive, but it was worth it.
My first gun was a Ivor Johnson. No, it was a Universal because the Ivor Johnsons worked. It was a Universal M1 carbine.
Yeah.
Bought it. Mom bought it for me for I think 13th birthday.
Yeah.
From Big Five Sporting Goods. For my 16th birthday, she bought me an HK91 for $475. It had a claw mount. It had the cleaning kit, and it had 2 mags and a bipod.
It's a
she
$3,000 gun now.
She had bought it from a neighbor across the street, old Vietnam guy. He was super cool, made all the cabinets and stuff. And he wanted $475 because that's what the back of the Soldier of Fortune magazine said.
Yeah. By the way, a private party transfer at the time John was getting that gun was completely legal.
Yeah, mom purchased it.
That was completely legal. Yeah, so I mean, I've been collecting guns for a long time, and so these guys they got my safe open. You know, I opened it for them. You know, they got my safe open, and they're pulling my guns out. And I got I got a 1919, which is a World War II belt fed. I got AKs, probably had 4 AKs at the time. I got ARs.
Did you ever shoot that 1919 before we shot it at
No,
the
that was
indoor
the first
range?
time. That was the first time at the indoor range. And they're laying these guns out. Now, the first assault weapons ban has already gone through. So, like the first 10 weapons, like if you're on point and you want to get somebody, the first 10 weapons they pull out of my safe would technically have all been illegal in California. So ATF is there. California Department of Justice there, and they're pulling all these guns out, and you should hire experts when you're thinking about getting into some sort of field. Like, they don't even know the names of some of the guns, so they're asking me, and I'm telling them, and they're writing them on the paperwork. And again, they're pulling out these guns that an amateur sleuth law enforcement guy would be like, that is on the ban list. That is on the ban list. Not a word.
So would they have been on the ban list?
They were.
I thought you registered. I saw you register all that shit.
So they were. The guy comes, the ATF guy, they bring out an HK USP Tactical. And the USP Tactical
and that was
threaded.
That's what he had a hard on about?
It had a threaded barrel. By the way, at the time, HK left-handed threaded their barrels on those tactical pistols,
And
so you couldn't put a suppressor on them.
And the suppressors were all right-hand threaded.
Yeah, so you couldn't put a suppressor on them. But threaded barrels were illegal in California. And so they unzip it, he looks at it, he goes, we got him. Now, it's him, a
Department of Justice
guy, and fucking Timmons from our local NCIS fucking operational status.
Yeah,
and then
I have a lot of Timmons stories.
I'm standing right next to these guys, and he's like, we got him. And Timmons is like, what is it? He's like, threaded barrel. It's a felony in the state of California. You can't have him. It's illegal. So we got him. And I go, you don't really got me.
Because you can put him.
No. I was like, you don't really got me. And the California Department of Justice guy was like, well, what do you mean?
Muzzle brake.
No, I go, you only got me if I didn't register that with the state of California. And he's like, you registered this? Now, that's the thing. You would think that they would have shown up with the fucking list of guns. I go, yes, I registered that and all of those assault rifles. And he goes, you got paperwork to prove it? I go, yes, I do. In the filing cabinet right in the living room. So go in the living room, get the filing cabinet, open it up, hand him the paperwork. Again, this is the type of work that that people are doing. He doesn't even check serial. Like he doesn't go out there and look at the AK and be like, okay, that's the AK here. That he doesn't go through all the guns and check serial numbers. He slides his finger down until he gets the HK pistol, looks at it. He goes, yeah, you're right. It's registered. Goes out to Timmons and he's like, I ain't got shit. He's registered all these weapons with the state of California. Went in my house, sat down on my couch and watched Apocalypse Now.
How many times do you think guys are like, you don't have me, these are registered? They go in the file cabinet and then rip those up or take them. Now it's on you to prove. I'm sure we're
Yeah, I mean, the reality is
especially now.
The reality is,
you were not fucking innocent until proven guilty.
When they did the first ban in California, they sent out cards. You sent cards in, but then they sent a letter out, and the letter had all your weapons on it. And it said these are the ones that are registered, blah blah blah. And then at the bottom it said, you will get a card from the state of California confirming that your weapons have been registered with the state of California. A year went by. I always attempt to do due diligence and stay within the law. A year went by. I got no card. So I get on the phone. There's a phone number on there on the letter, and I call them. Department of Justice, how may I help you? I'm like, yes. And this was Agent so-and-so, Department of Justice. It wasn't just a clerk. I go, yes, I registered my weapons with you guys, blah, 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 time frame. I go, I got this letter, and it says you guys are supposed to issue a card. And he's like, truth of the matter is, I couldn't even tell you if your guns are registered. They didn't fund any of this. I'm the only one in this office. If you have that paper, you're good to go. So, the reality is, if they were being malicious, I would have been, well, maybe not. I would say I would have been fucked because they could have took that piece of that paperwork and tore it up. But when I first got it, I did the damn suppressor thing. I made copies of it and I put a copy in my truck glove compartment. I put copies all over. So if I was out in the desert shooting, I could produce it and be like, these are registered weapons. So, but yeah, if that was your only copy, how do you prove that you registered them? There's no way you can prove that. There's no way you can prove your due diligence if they come down and say, no, you're full of shit. I mean, you think about it, even the ATF. Let's say you register your you do the paperwork, you register your stuff, and the ATF sends you your little letter with your cute little tax stamp on it. Now, for the ATF, you have to show them your original copy. So,
with the stamp.
So let's say the ATF comes out and they're like, "Hey, man, we're just doing a random check. It's not a big deal. I don't even need to see the suppressor. Do you just have your paperwork?" And you go, "Yeah, I got my paperwork. I'll show you because you do technically have to show the ATF and the IRS your paperwork." So you bring your fucking paperwork out with the stamp on it. I mean, they literally could light it on fire. And unless you had a copy, there's no way you could prove. I mean, if it's the government saying you don't have it, it's not like there's going to be some watchdog dude in the ATF that's going to be like, "No, I actually saw it. He was registered. It's good to go." I mean, if they want to get you, they can. It's that whole thing. If the government wants to get you, they can get you. And if that's the problem with compliance, the more compliant you are, the more they feel like they can get away with. Not that, again, I'm not telling you to fucking flip off cops and drive away real fast. But again, there are very good examples of egregious law enforcement incidents at the federal level that should have been punished, and they're usually rewarded.
I know cops hate it when I say this. I know part of our audience is law enforcement. I love watching those fucking cop audit videos.
What is the I'm a sovereign citizen?
Anytime I see law enforcement, I know, right? We're out, especially if we're out in public. I'm like, "Are you threatening me? Are you detaining me? What crime do you suspect me of? I'm only traveling. I don't have to have a license." They always laugh about it. But I see them, and they do stop motherfuckers, and they tell them that they're doing some illegal shit. And when the dude knows the law, or I love it when he's an attorney, right? And the dude's an attorney. But do you think that the corruption do you think the corruption's bigger now, or you think it's just that we see it more now?
I think we just see it more now. I think it's just, I think we just, through social media and stuff like that, you hear about it more. I don't think it's bigger. I mean, the reality is 99% of all law enforcement are showing up to work to just do a job, to, I'm sure they're not putting a big fucking Superman cape on when they go out to work, but 99% of them are just there to work, right? They're not there to rob you. They're not there to beat you. The truth of the matter is, if you know a police officer, like a regular police officer or a fucking sheriff's deputy, and you ask him about altercations, like if you ask him what he's going to tell you, I promise you he's going to say this: it's the last fucking thing I want to deal with. It's the last thing. I'm not out on the road looking to piss people off or get into some sort of altercation. And the only reason why I'm saying that is the prime reason why I do not work in law enforcement, why I did not go into law enforcement when I got out of the military, is paperwork. Do you honestly think that a cop wants to get off of work, do his 8-hour shift, get to the police station, and then spent 3 fucking hours writing that's just one incident, right?
They literally throw cases out because the guy fucking spelled a word wrong.
Yeah, writing up a fucking police report because you are a fucking jackass and you ran through an intersection and you want to claim sovereign citizen. You know what I'm saying? Yes, there's 10%, no matter what. I don't care if you go to a nunnery, there are 10% of those nuns who are not towing the line. It's everywhere. And then what
does that mean?
Meaning
they're running a brothel out the back?
Maybe. There's always turds, right? There's always turds, especially when you exponentially make things bigger. So when you're talking about hundreds, think about it.
Do you think it's really as low as 10%?
Yeah, I bet it's 10%. If it was higher than 10%, it would be it would be rampant.
For the nuns.
Oh, for the nuns.
I'd give the nuns, okay, there's only 10% of nuns that are prostituting. But in the normal world, I think the turds are higher than 10%. I don't think turds are probably higher 10% are actually psychopaths or actual fucking serial killers.
Turds are,
I think, maybe 40%. If society collapsed and they you ran in, if they were within arm's reach at Walmart, they would kill you.
I don't know. I feel like I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. Camden, Tennessee.
Okay.
Camden, Tennessee. Let's say tomorrow, rule of law collapse. Like Washington, D.C. caught on fire. The redcoats showed up and burned everything down. Fucking Canada has moved into the Dakotas. It's just fucking mayhem. Mexico's coming up across the border. Texas, it's just fucking
everything
mayhem.
You just said is highly possible.
Highly possible.
One thing happens, all those other things would happen.
Let's just say that has happened and rule of law has fell to the fucking wayside. I think in a city such as Camden, you would probably have a weekend where you were like, I don't know if it's safe to go out. And then after that, everything would be fixed.
You want me to tell you why that is?
Well, because we know where the shitheads are.
That's exactly right. Everybody knows where the shitheads are.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be us going and taking care of it. They fucking would just be handled. We wouldn't even have to live here.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
We wouldn't have to leave here,
that's what I'm saying. If not, the reality, too, in a small town like...
most of them turds, they ain't even going to know. They're so used to stealing shit off porches, and when Granny fucking smokes them...
Well, I think a town like Camden, if rule of law broke down and people knew that rule of law broke down, even the turds you might not have to deal with as much as you think. Like the turds would become very compliant when they knew there was nothing keeping them from being exterminated.
Open season.
So, when I think of towns like Waverly, I think of towns like I don't worry in Waverly that if the world got smoked and the city of Waverly was the only thing that was left, we'd be fine. I told Lance, I said, when he was off, the world's going to end. I'm
My
like,
Lance or different Lance? Gun store?
Yeah, different Lance.
Gun store Lance.
I told Lance, I said, the reality, because he was really worried about end of times, right? Or the economy collapsing.
When was this? Recent?
No, this is mid-COVID.
Okay.
And I said, the reality is,
He's a big church guy.
yeah. I said, the reality is the only difference between a economic collapse in the United States for you is going to be how long is it going to take for the old ladies to start selling the stuff on the side of the road that you buy anyways, then now you're investing everything locally. Like, yeah, if you look at the writing on the wall, I'm about to tell you. If you live in New York City, if you live in LA, I mean, even Nashville to a certain extent, and rule of law
Memphis.
disappears,
Get the fuck
fucking
out of there.
hellscape. It's
Yeah.
going to be a hellscape. You've got 24 hours worth of food. I guarantee you at hour 25 in those big cities, people are going to be eating each other. So yeah, you're in a hellscape. But out here, like if New York burned to, the truth of the matter is, you know, we talk about this all the time. Just, you know, live in your space, right? Live in your world. Affect your area. If New York City burnt to the ground tomorrow, like the entire metropolitan New York City burnt to the ground, disappeared, didn't even have to burn, it just disappeared. No one that we know in this community or within the surrounding communities is affected by that in any way. There's not a single thing that New York City produces or creates that makes this country better.
So I was going to bring this up earlier, and perfect transition because it's the same thing. Do you know there's an earthquake warning system that they have now, right? Mm-hmm. When we were getting all this rain, you know, California's flooded. I don't know which parts of California. To watch the news, you would think all of California is underwater. And maybe it's because of that, but the earthquake warning system gave a 48-hour window that there is a high likelihood, they said high twice, of a 7-point or greater earthquake in the San Francisco area, originating in San Francisco and coming down all the way to LA. So California, when they always talk about California breaking off and fucking falling in the ocean, that was your window, right? If California did break off in the ocean, wouldn't affect us, not in the immediate in any fucking way. I mean, we would fucking laugh about it probably. What would the real ramifications of that be?
There would be some that's why I picked on New York City, because you guys don't produce anything. There would be ramifications of losing California.
Because we don't have oranges and avocados?
I believe California is the seventh largest producer of agriculture food in the world.
I don't think it is anymore.
It's
still 80% of it leaves the United States.
Still. All your
fact check me, somebody.
And I'm pretty sure all of your raw goods come in through LA. So the amount of fucking TVs and watches and Walkmans and AK-47s that come in through the port of LA is ginormous. So there would be a transitioning period. Like all those people that bought beachfront property in Arizona would be like, woo woo, we're fucking millionaires. But there would be a point where cargo would have to be shipped to different ports. Wouldn't surprise me if the U.S. military, if that happened, the U.S. military attacked Mexico and secured all the port facilities in Mexico in order to bring in the supplies that we need from China. What do you got?
So California produces over 13% of all the nation's agricultural production. It is still the sixth largest agricultural exporter in the entire world.
So yeah, they bumped up. I bet it's all those some fucking nuts in the tree.
Almonds.
I bet it's all the goddamn almonds. That's why you don't have any water, because you're growing food in California in the desert that you shouldn't be growing.
They killed all those almonds.
Yeah.
It's mostly fruit and nut.
Yeah, fruit and nut.
Yeah, I don't eat fruit or nut.
You try to keep the nuts out of your mouth, John?
I give lots of nut.
I
don't eat any nuts.
No fruits in your mouth?
So nothing I have to have, because my fucking meat that I eat, it doesn't eat fucking fruits or nuts.
Right. What?
My meat.
Oh yeah, your meat doesn't eat fruits or nuts.
Doesn't eat fruit or nuts.
Yeah. So I mean, there would be ramifications if California fell into the ocean. But the beautiful thing about America is this is a capitalist country and we are entrepreneurs. And yes, there would be a fucking port authority in Las Vegas within a year, right? Within a year, Las Vegas would be turned into the gambling
Just
capital of the world to the Port Authority.
Leave the Teamsters alone
Yeah.
and let them fucking run shit
Yeah.
like they did in the fucking
And
70s.
it would probably take them a year before they could fix all that. But
you know who the biggest mobsters are?
well, union reps, but
It's that green fucking dumpster sitting out there, Waste Management. You
Oh,
wanna see
yeah.
some crazy shit?
Yeah.
Watch some shit on Waste Management.
waste management. Yeah, well,
And what better way to fucking dispose of bodies?
Yeah, I saw a thing about current New York City, and they were talking. I think it was Vice. They were talking about how everybody thinks the mob is gone, like the mob doesn't run things, and they were talking to a guy that was building a high-rise building in New York City, and he was like, "Oh no. Yes, the mob still controls everything that goes on in this town. They're not advertising that it's the mob, but if I don't pay the guy with the clipboard, then that cement truck that only has 30 minutes to get here and dump that cement is not going to make it in 30 minutes, and that cement's going to harden that truck, and I am fucked."
That's because it's all union.
It's all union, but the mob runs the unions, right?
Is it even? It's not the mob as we think of it, though. It's
Yeah,
not.
it's not-
It's
I mean,
not.
it's probably not
It's
suits
not
and-
Italian families. It's fucking. It's bureaucrats.
Yeah, it's not suits and it's not. Yeah, it's bureaucrats, but it's still the same way. I mean, if you can slow a truck down to the point that the concrete hardens in it, you're the mob.
Bear always talks about OSHA and EPA guys and stuff, and they did like big energy infrastructure stuff, right? Huge windmills, gas lines, electric, like fucking big infrastructure stuff. And he's like, we were on some job someplace, and we're driving down, and he's like, there's these fucking fiddler crabs everywhere. It's this mass migration of fiddler crabs. And here comes Schmedley out of nowhere, and he's got his little hard hat and his little fucking, I don't know, Ford Lightning electric truck, probably
Right.
not, but this guy's losing his shit that they have run over these fiddler crabs. And he's like, well, we just drove down the road. The entire road. You yourself just ran over fiddler crabs. Starts writing it up and $10,000 a crab, and he's like, it's some Simpsons level cartoon shit, but until you're in the middle of it,
Right, yeah.
you can't fathom that it's fucking real.
Yeah.
And that is 50% of your population only gets paid because they steal the money from
somebody
someplace else.
Yeah, it's the great money scam. Your federal agencies. The funny thing is, federal agencies will steal money from other federal agencies. A good example of that is like 29 Palms. We've been training at 29 Palms since, I believe, late 40s. So the Marine Corps has been blowing shit up, dropping stuff off, dumping oil, just doing all the things that military units do at a higher volume
It's a
than most
toxic
of them.
waste dump.
So 29 Palms, the reality is there are places in 29 Palms that you can't go because we've dropped the wrong ordinance that they can't get rid of. And so there's always what would be considered an EPA super fund going on at 29 Palms. And every year, an EPA representative goes out to 29 Palms, walks around, and says, "You owe us $29 million." And every year, the Marine Corps writes a check and gives it to the EPA. And basically, that's how the EPA is funding itself, by stealing money from other departments. And then so the Department of Defense, the reality is, you think about the Department of Defense, they're getting more money right now to do nothing than they got when they were fighting 2 wars. So they're getting more money now to do nothing than when we were fighting 2 wars. A lot of that money is just move around money. Like,
Well, every time
they-
it moves, a little
yeah.
bit disappears.
they know that the EPA is going to come out to 29 Palms, and now what you've really done is you've found a way to fund an organization that doesn't really need to be funded by going to all these, because there's no base. The reality is there's no base that you could go to and not find violations. Like, I literally could put an eye patch on and walk in a semicircle and find enough EPA violations to make myself very rich on any base. It doesn't matter what it is. You think Camp Pendleton's clean? Fuck. Just walking as a kid. As a kid, I went up there because a contractor friend of mine was building a barracks. So I was 15, I think. and we went behind the tank motor pool. So we're just outside the fence behind the tank motor pool, and we're in the washouts that are created from the mountains, and we're just running around because we're on the base and it's the coolest shit ever. And we found a belt of 50 cal ammo. So
We used to live on military housing.
yeah, you lived in Tierra Santa.
No. Before that, I was at Camp Pendleton. We lived on
okay.
Camp Pendleton, and we lived in military housing. And there was a tank grave, like a tank museum graveyard. Do you ever remember that?
I don't remember it.
There's 30, 40 different tanks just sitting out
there.
in this field. Yeah, and the hatches were open. You could get inside them and everything. Man. Yeah. And then when
They did that right after the Gulf War too.
this was before any of that.
Yeah, but I'm saying they did that right after the Gulf War. They had refabbed all these M60 tanks, and they were going to sell them to Saudi Arabia. And then the Gulf War happened, and the M1 Abrams went out there and beat the shit out of everything. And Saudi Arabia was like, "Fuck those M60 tanks. We want M1 Abrams." So out at Pogus, there was like 120 M60 tanks that had been totally refurbished, had everything in them, and they just let those motherfuckers sit out there and rot.
And then when I was a little bit older, I was living in Tierra Santa. So that had to be like first, second grade, because we moved to Tierra Santa in third grade. And then when I met this dude named Jeff, when I talk about, they used to drop me off and I'd break concrete up. They'd drop me with a sledgehammer and a wheelbarrow, and I'd just like break up concrete patios. Well, that guy owned a company. When I met him, he was doing contracting on Camp Pendleton, and we built some big patio covers. It was at Recon Swimming at the swim pool, right? And then he built a parachute drying, like a tower, parachute tower to dry the parachutes. Like we'd worked on that as a kid too. It was just full circle.
Illegal child labor on a federal installation. I cannot believe that they would allow contractors to get away with that.
It's just like, it's just crazy the shit that, how insane things are. Everything's a fee. Everything's a fee.
I mean, you lived in Tierra Santa, and you think about Tierra Santa was a housing complex that they built for the military families.
Well, that was down the road. That was Murphy Canyon housing.
Murphy Canyon.
Navy housing.
And but even Tierra Santa was originally a military housing that was built on an old Navy bombing range.
Yes, all of it.
And did you live there when those kids blew themselves up? Were you there?
I went to daycare with those two kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew those two kids.
Yeah, that's
Corey, one of them's name was Corey.
That's the legacy that gets left behind. No matter how clean you think an area is, there's always something. And some kids found a mortar, a piece of munitions it had to have been from World War II, because they stopped using that as a range in
it was called
the
Camp
early
Elliott.
40s.
You can look it up. There was a Nike missile base out there.
Yeah, and they found it and started playing catch with it, and eventually it blew up.
My goal is I want to cease and desist from Oprah Winfrey.
Cease and desist from Oprah. But I mean, how are you going to? You know how we could do it? I'll bet you $100, $50, that we could get a cease and desist from Oprah Winfrey if SOE starts a Book of the Month club.
Or you get a car. You get a car.
It's just Hot Wheels taped underneath the seat.
Do you know who Inky Johnson is?
I do not.
He's got a really good Oprah story. Really good. He actually met Oprah Winfrey.
Do you know that? What's his name?
He was on her show.
No, you know the guy we need to get in here is I know you know this, Brandon. What's Oprah's dude's name that lives in the barn out back?
Oh yeah, her boyfriend.
Is it Segwit? Man, it would be awesome to talk to that guy, because he's like a kept. Yes, it's a helicopter.
That helicopter's moving too fast for our helicopters.
It sounds like Life Flight.
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, maybe they're listening as we speak. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would be hard to get a cease and desist from Oprah.
What's her boyfriend? It's her boy toy.
Yeah, her boy toy. Like, she won't marry him, and she makes him live in the fucking little cabin out back. It would be great to talk to him, because I'll bet he's got some crazy stories.
You know he's not allowed to talk to.
Oh, I know he's not allowed to talk, because you've never seen him do an interview.
Because he's not alive anymore.
Yeah, you've never seen him do an interview.
He's a symbiote.
So, yeah. But, I mean, I guess, could you be, like, if you think about Oprah Winfrey and kind of the money that she had, the disposable money that she has to just throw around, could you be a kept man with that kind of money being thrown at you?
Right.
Or is it worse? Is it she's not really throwing money at him, and he has this idea in his head that he's eventually going to get money, and she's going to cut him out of the will in the long run?
You know, she was super tied in with Epstein and Weinstein and all of them.
Weinstein. She was
You know,
the crazy thing about Oprah Winfrey and the cancel culture is Oprah Winfrey was providing girls to Weinstein, like was making those introductions. She was a pimp.
Yeah.
She was a pimp.
Stedman Graham.
Stedman. If you're out there and you're listening, you need to fly to Tennessee. We need to get you on the old podcast. I'm telling you, you would be a hoot. Hoot!
So do you think we could get any of those agents or anybody on the podcast? I don't think they would do it. I don't even know how we would find them.
Probably not. I don't think we would get them on the
people that run our case.
I still have one of their cards.
I don't know if we want to open that.
It was actually crazy. It was actually crazy. So
the ATF guys were fucking super cool to me. Those were the only dudes that unhandcuffed me, let me take a leak. They're like, hey, keep your fucking mouth shut. Get an attorney.
It was actually crazy. So all that shit happened. Had my day in court. Went back to SOI. Spent 6 months in hazmat.
So you went from head of sniper school,
to
School of Infantry.
Head of sniper school at School of Infantry, and then after my day in court, they put me in the S4 because they didn't know what to do with me.
What's S4?
S4 is your logistical support, so it's the people who run all the behind the scenes shit, and they put me in S4, and S4 immediately said you're going to be the new staff and COIC of hazmat. I had no clue what any of that shit was. So I did 6 months down there, a very eye-opening experience. And then I got orders to go to 1-7. They're like, hey, guess what? You're going to 1-7 tomorrow. I'm like, I got kids in a fucking house. I can't. You got 2 weeks.
So what's 1-7?
1st Battalion, 7th Marines, the Ridge Runners at 29 Palms. It's an infantry battalion. It's just a regular infantry battalion. I got up there. Fucking showed up on a Sunday, like literally showed up on a Sunday. It's summertime, 120 degrees. So I left Camp Pendleton at 70 degrees, get to 29 Palms, it's 120 degrees on a Sunday. I meet the company commander and he's like, you've got 3rd platoon. 3rd platoon is your platoon. And we're going to the field tomorrow. I'm like, it's really hot. it's really hot. And he's like, and what makes it even better is because we are the Ridge Runners, we're going to march out to the field. We're going.
Aren't you guys famous for something?
Yeah, we're going 10 miles. We're going to march 10 miles out to the field tomorrow. I'm like,
was he with you?
Who?
The guy that's telling you this.
Yeah, the CO? Yeah. He's like, we're going to march 10 miles out there tomorrow. I'm like, holy shit, I am not ready for this. And fortunately, the company gunny was a sniper. And he's like, oh, Staff Sergeant's here. He hasn't even hooked up with his platoon yet. I'm going to take him out in the morning, and he's going to help me set up the fucking CP. And the CO was like, oh, that's fine. So I got to drive out with the company gunny while everybody else had to march out. And I'm telling you, it was a death march. Anyways.
And this is like full combat load type stuff?
Yeah, full combat. We were going to war. But that's a total nother story. We're talking about these NCIS guys. So go over to Iraq, right? Go over to Iraq, spend, I think we did 9 months that time in Iraq. Come back. I have literally been back for 2 days. Phone rings. This is fucking Special Agent Hill from NCIS. Is this Staff Sergeant Escalderon? I'm like, I'm like, what the?
How many years later is this?
This would probably have been 2 years later. Yeah, I bet it was at least 2. May have been more. May have been 4 years. And so I'm like, what the fuck is going? And he's like, hey, think about this statement. He's like, we have been trying to get a hold of you. I'm like, when you tried to get a hold of me last time, you found me in a day. I don't understand what you mean by we've been trying to get a hold of you. He's like, yes, we've been trying to get a hold of you. All your guns are down here. We want you to come pick them up. I'm like, I can just come pick them up? And he's like, yeah, you need to come pick them up.
Where?
Down at Camp Pendleton at the
So,
at NCIS, and so like you need to come pick these bad bears up.
So weave me a picture of what NCI, because I have something to add to this you might not know. What does it look like?
It looks like a building from 1940s, single
With a
story.
chain link fence around it with some barbed wire.
No, single story building that you could walk up to the front door. Now, once you got in the building, you know, they had the little secure window that you couldn't see through, and then the secure door, and you'd have to, you know, show them your ID to get in through the secure door. I mean, it was a semi-secure facility. And
So
then,
if NCIS had some motorcycles,
yes.
would they be inside the building?
No, they would have been in now their parking lot was chain linked off. So they had a chain link parking lot, and where the motorcycle was in another chain link like area where we keep confiscated shit.
Do you know about this?
I know the story, and I actually saw the motorcycle when I went to go pick up my stuff, your motorcycle was in that lot.
You know somebody stole it.
Yeah.
You know, they fucking came halfway right before they pulled me out, right, to go down to San Diego or whatever. They came and wanted to question me. Like I mastermind the rescue of my motorcycle from Camp Pendleton.
I don't even think were you, when they asked you that question, were you in custody or were you still out?
They came to Lompoc.
Oh, they came. Okay, because
I was 11 months through 22 month sentence.
They asked me the same question. Like they were like, "Do you know anybody that would steal a motorcycle?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And like, "Well, John Willis's motorcycle is missing," and I go, "Isn't he in jail?" And they're like, "Yeah, but it's been missing." I can't remember what they said, but I'm like, "He's in jail." I don't what. You're in the middle. Like the reality is. Guys, I don't think you understand this. This NCIS place is in the middle of Camp Pendleton, surrounded, like the NCIS place is surrounded by just testosterone-filled 18-year-olds that love nothing more than to rip through the desert with the wind blowing through their hair on a motorcycle. And John didn't have cheap motorcycles, like the motorcycles that I don't even know why they took them. Because they, in no way, shape, or form, first off, did the Marine Corps or any other service have the type of motorcycle that John had? And, you know, they were fucking orange and...
No, this is even better.
They were...
So it was a 1991 KX 125 that was lime green, right? So...
Oh, maybe that's why they took it.
We rattle can't because they were chasing everybody out when we go riding out in Tirisana. Mm-hmm. I desert camoed it out.
And that's what they took?
I even had... large shrink tubing. I took the forks apart and put heat shrink tubing on so the forks weren't blue anodized anymore. Right. They were black. I did the swing arm so it was black, painted it all fucking like desert chocolate chip camo, the whole bike. Now there were some other motorcycles that they took from the old shop, right? There was some stuff that had come from Dermo. There was an old Kawasaki KLX 350, the reconnaissance bikes. Yeah, there was one in the garage. They took that. Never did they didn't inventory it. They didn't say anything about it. They took this KX 125, 1991 KX 125. This is what they're all up in arms over. They also took two brand new YZ250s and they loaded them up.
That's exactly what I believe that I saw.
We got the YZs back. They also loaded up at the same time. They loaded up the biggest Craftsman tool set that you could get. It's like taller than me. Like you couldn't put it in a truck. It's so big. And they wheeled that shit up. And Jennifer, my girlfriend at the time, she's like, "Why are you taking all this?" She's like, "Well, he stole this from Camp Pendleton." She goes, "I bought this for him for Father's Day." And they go, "Do you have any proof?" She's like, "I do have proof." They're like, "Well, good. You can solve it later." She had the receipt, right? Fucking, because we went and bought it like a week later. Same with those bikes. Like those, she's like, those bikes came from the bike shop 2 blocks up here. Yeah. Like we got that back. We didn't get any of the other shit back. None of it. And they took so much shit that they never inventoried. They just never said shit about it.
So I go to, I get that phone call and I immediately call a friend of mine who was deep in law enforcement, like deep in law enforcement. I call him up and I'm like, "Hey, I just got this call. They want me to come pick up my guns." Now, you have to understand it, but at this time I had resided myself that I would never see my guns again.
How many were there?
At that time, probably 60, maybe 100.
That seems low.
Well, there's a secondary story, but it was what they had in custody.
So, like, for instance, they say they took over 1 million rounds of ammunition from the shop, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the truth is they got tired of carrying cans of ammo up into that big ass Ryder truck. They only took 30% of the ammunition.
The crazy thing was when you collect military shit. Now, understand, I can show you pictures of me at 8 years old in full kit, like full helmet, flak jacket. When you collect military shit and you're a bit of a hoarder, you have tons of shit. They did the same thing when they opened my garage. They're like, we're not taking all this. I go, you don't need to take all of it because none of it's property of the U.S. If you look at everything that's in here, it's not even in the system anymore. Like you can't get a fucking green Alice pack and fucking dirt at.
Plus, if you're listening to this, you don't know, like you can go to auctions, or we had friends that went to auctions and owned surplus stores.
Yeah.
So we could go, hey, I want an Alice pack, and we'll get a whole fucking trailer full of Alice packs, and we can buy an auction cheaper than we can buy 10 of these things.
10 of these things, yeah.
And we can sit on them and use them in the future for ruck
Never.
mods and all kinds of stuff.
So I call my law enforcement guy and I'm like, hey, it's a trap. Like I'm the fucking fish face from Star Wars going, it's a trap. It's a trap. Right. And he's like, nah. He goes, I guarantee you what's happened is they're doing inventory and they keep running against your property. They can't destroy it because technically you weren't convicted of a felony. So they got to give it back to you. They're just trying to give, I'm like, dude, still, it's a trap, right? I'm just throwing it out there. And he's like, would you feel better if I came with you? Now, in my head, I'm like, yes. Well, I mean, I told him, I'm like, I would feel so much better if you came with me.
Did it ever cross your mind that maybe he was in on it?
No, never. Like this individual,
I know.
I would, like, here's the thing. Let's say I was a fucking arch criminal, right? If I was an arch criminal, some mastermind doing criminal shit, and this individual showed up to take me in, I wouldn't even fight it. I would be like, yeah, bro, you're right. Let's go. Like that's how much I trust him. Like I trust him that even being a heinous criminal, that I would get the fairest shake from that individual. So, going down there, hindsight's 2020. The reality, if it was a trap, it wouldn't have mattered if Chris was there. It's not like they would have been like, oh, wait a minute, you brought your guy. Yeah, we're not going to, but so he went with me, and I go in there. All of them are there. Well, except for Timmons, who had some trouble with his own.
What was his troubles?
He got in trouble in Iraq.
Do you think we could get him on the podcast?
No way.
Why?
No way. Because he was the damn Sith Lord of that group. Like the reality is he made his nut on that case. Right? He made his nut on that case. He was the Sith
shit.
Lord of that case. So all of them were there that I had saw that it had been in party to everything. And the guy that was in charge of the army is like, oh my God, I'm so glad we got a hold of you. You got some great guns in there. We wanted to make sure you got them back. And, we just didn't want to have to destroy them and blah, blah, blah. And so they just went into this. They have a fucking.
Do you think they knew who you were?
Yeah. I mean, the way they talked to me like we were old friends.
I mean, like Marine Corps hero. They
No,
know
they didn't know any of that
lore.
shit.
No,
because I got my Bronze Star after that incident. So I don't think so, but they did kind of treat me in a more, I don't even want to say professional way, but they were treating me as a more of a friendly manner. And like they were helping me pull the shit out of the armory. again, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but
I think that it's
they
beyond
did.
that.
They didn't look at a fucking serial number. They
Did they
didn't
give
look
you
at.
any-
They just gave me every box in there. They
Did
actually
they give you anything that didn't belong to you?
they actually gave me some stuff that didn't belong to me. Now, none of it was firearms, but it was firearms related stuff.
I have a story like that.
They gave me. We had another gentleman in our midst that was rolled up too, and they gave me some of his shit. And I didn't know until I got home because they put everything in evidence boxes, right? And so he's kind of opening the boxes, looking at him. He goes, "Yeah, this is yours, and just handing them out to me. And he even gave me a paper sack that was not mine. They gave me shit back that was not mine. And the reality is, they gave me shit back that they were trying to convict me for having in the first place. So it was a trip. Very friendly, got all my guns back, and I never want to be in that position again, because if the government wants you, they're going to get you. Because when the reality is, when this stuff happened to John and happened to everybody that was involved, I hadn't seen him in a year. I hadn't seen you in a year. Osmond actually, confidential informant number 1, actually came up to sniper school and tried to entrap
All the instructors with MP5 stuff?
Yeah, maybe all the instructors, but definitely me, because he threw that MP5 stuff at me and then was like, does anybody else in the room want an MP5? And
I thought it was mags.
it was MP5 mags, yeah. Does anybody else want anything in the room? But, I mean, at that point I was like, what are you really doing here? Like, you came up here to tell me that John is in trouble. I haven't seen John in a year. What are you really doing here? And then he was like, oh, maybe you want some MP5 stuff. You want this and that. And when I told the NCIS guys that what he had said, they're like, he didn't really say that. I go, no, he said that. And there was 6 other people in the room. Do you want to interview them and see that? And they actually, I think it was Hill. I'm not sure. It wasn't Timmons, but it was one of the other agents that was actually talking about charging Osmond for violation of their confidentiality. That, like, the reality is, Chris was not supposed to come up to SOI and tell me that you were in trouble, right? So, and he didn't really even tell me much. He was just saying stuff that I was like, why are you telling? It just didn't make sense why he was
always
there.
doing that shit, though.
But it just didn't make, like, I know he was always doing that shit and he was always fast and furious, but it just didn't make sense why he was sitting in the middle of all my instructors and airing out all this dirty laundry when, the reality is, the instructor crew that was there, they didn't know who the fuck this guy was. And he was just spilling out his guts. I'm like, it was one of those things. You don't know who any of these people are. Why are you telling all your fucking shit out?
What do you think started all of it?
This is what I was told. Like, in my head, this is what I was told. I was told that Chris, and this is not you telling me this. This is just in general, I guess. I don't know how I know this, but Chris was using Rick to steal patterns in order to knock off your stuff.
That's true.
And
Rick Riordan.
Yeah, Rick Riordan was stealing patterns to
number 2.
knock off your stuff. And then Osmond was having your stuff made across the border
In Mexico.
And that you found out about it.
He had it sitting in his shop. He inherited a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
Brother-in-law, who they had an insurance policy against, for some reason, dies in an automobile accident, and he gets all this money. He buys that florist shop down right across the...
Right.
And that's when he puts his shop up, and he's got this wall of SOE stuff, and he has a wall of all the shit, and he's like, this is the exact same stuff. We just have it made in Mexico. We sell it for half the price. And he was all over Light Fighter saying this, and I busted it out. I'm like, he copied all of our shit.
Yeah.
And that's when he started going, Willis uses slave Mexican labor and all this stuff, right? So when we got raided 2 years later, maybe 2 years almost, we thought it was Border Patrol coming in, INS. So, like, but we had some friends at Border Patrol, and we had I-9 forms on all of our employees
Right.
and everything. So like we had done all of our due diligence. So go ahead.
Yeah, and so what I was told was that Mike Bottoms paid a visit to Chris Osman, and at the point that Mike Bottoms paid a visit to Chris Osman went to NCIS and said that SOE was dealing in military equipment.
So Mike went to kill or threaten Chris.
I mean, you know, the crazy thing about Mike Bottoms is, like, if you think about all the people that had to fucking interact with what went down, Mike just like he skated right out of it, went up to the cabin and got down, went up to the cabin in Big Bear and like didn't even. The funny thing about Mike is, I mean, you know, Mike's stories, right? We know all Mike's stories. We've heard all his stories, and I've seen him Japanese people would come in from Japan and
Yeah, I was
like
I was at the photo shoots.
and he would he used the sniper classroom one time
Yeah.
to do some fucking fighting, and I seen him whipping these dudes' ass, right?
Not only that, when it was going around that he wasn't Rhodesian SAS,
yeah.
Mike had books with pictures of him
Yeah.
and that other dude in them. Like I saw the fucking printed
Well,
books.
you know, when somebody like one time Mike disappeared, and he was gone for like a month or something, and then when he came back,
Hypothermia.
no, he was like, I was in Africa. I was hunting poachers, and I'm like, this was kind of the almost the height of bullshit. Like there had been some people that have already questioned whether Mike was telling the truth or not, and and so he's like, yeah, in Africa hunting poachers and shit, and I'm like, whatever, Mike, I don't care, you're full of shit, or whatever, you know, and it wasn't Soldier of Fortune, it was like one of the magazines that replaced Soldier of Fortune. I'm thumbing through it,
Grunt style. Or
and they
some
have this
shit.
whole fucking. They're doing this whole expose on African mercenaries hunting poachers. Right? They're doing this whole expose, and there's one fucking picture of a dude with his feet crossed, leaning against one of the bush trucks that they use, holding. I don't know what kind of rifle he's holding. I probably have that picture somewhere. Holding some rifle with his face blurred out. Now, Mike, you fucked up. He was wearing the same exact worn out fucking boots that he was wearing in the picture. So immediately, like, you know, you blur a face out. If you don't really know the guy, you probably can't tell it's him. But I mean, it was 100% Mike Bottoms leaning against that truck.
Vince said he was the catalyst.
I mean, I don't know. It's
Because
just
so when I cut ties with Osmond, and I'm like, fuck you, we're done. Because he was a dealer, right? And he came in and he ordered like one of everything we fucking made. And then I started having SEALs come in, right? So he orders up all this shit, and I'm like, hey, we don't have this stuff. Like, we're gonna have to build this, and nobody buys this in black. Nobody buys this in whatever, right? And then I had SEALs start coming in, and they're like, hey, I ordered this thing from you, and I'm like, what's your name? And we were using a computer system at that time, right? Lene was there, so we start looking through all this shit. I'm like, dude, I don't have you in the system. I don't know anything about this. And he's like, well, I ordered it through Chris Osmond. I'm like, oh, you did? Yeah. So Chris was taking all these orders and telling people that we weren't delivering it. And there was an order. We had this dude in there, and there was an officer that had come up. They were using the Range 116. So he's like, hey, we placed this order for like $3,500, a bunch of 40 Mike subloads or some shit. I'm like, I own the company. Like, I don't know anything about this. They ordered them from Chris. Chris was telling him that I wasn't fucking delivering,
yeah.
And there was a lot of that shit. So it kind of unraveled, right? And that's I put that out public, and that's when all that shit started. So the word was that the head detective on the case for California Department of Justice is actually related to Chris somehow.
Chris, yeah, that's what I heard too, that he was related. And the only thing that was weird about that whole, you know, when we bring up Mike Bottoms is
well, Mike launched a line of nylon gear. Mike also
did he really?
Yes.
Huh.
He also
I know he was doing knives.
He launched a line of knives that were very much like some of Strider stuff.
Yeah, I mean.
And then there was this kid that was like super fanboy. He became a police officer, And he was typing all kinds of. Remember the guy? He had a cute wife, and her dad did neon stuff. And when they made a special operations equipment neon sign that was in the front of the store, like real neon, that kid, he started typing all kinds of crazy shit out all over on all these forums and stuff.
Well, I will say this
about me.
Yeah, I will say this: when they brought me in, and they said they asked me about Mike Bottoms
Or Ajax, Mike Ajax.
They just asked me about Mike Bottoms. They're like, Mike Bottoms. I'm like, I don't know. I think he was in Rhodesia fighting with the SAS and Solo Scouts, and he's kind of a bit of a badass. Now, the thing that fucked me up when I told him that is they both laughed. Like, they both laughed, and then they never asked about him again. Like, he was never brought up again.
Because he's one of them.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he's one of them or if, like you said, how the reality is he was actively participating in that circle. Like, when that was happening.
Because this is when I started.
Why wasn't he picked up?
This is where I was going with this, because I cut Chris off and I'm like, hey, if you got orders for SOE stuff through Osmond, we don't have any of the money for it. Your orders, you better get with Osmond, get your money back, because we don't know shit about it. We just had some SEALs in here, said they ordered fucking, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
We were never given the order. We were never paid for the order. We don't have this fucking thing. And that's when that all went. So Mike comes to my apartment, right? Mike's actually sleeping on my couch over at the other place. And then I got the new apartment by the beach. He comes to the apartment. He's like, hey man, Chris is really sorry for what happened. And I'm like, fuck Chris. He's like, dude, I understand what you're saying, but the best revenge is just to take his money. You should just fucking take his. And that's when we fucking opened that back up. And that's when there never would have been any of that shit there without fucking Mike Bottoms middleman in that shit.
I mean,
And then Chris is placing orders, but he's like, hey, I'm going to come pick these up Saturday morning. I'm like, okay, I'll be there at 10 a.m. He's like, well, can I be there I got to be there at 9. Can I be there at 9? So Rick Reardon was coming in and cutting patterns and shit. And that's when that all started. So Rick was trying to sew some shit out of his garage. And they were literally, Lene's like, hey, have you ever watched any of the security footage? I'm like, no. She's like, I've been taking these tapes home. Hey, you need to see this. And they were fucking taking, there's cameras right there too. They were taking the patterns and they were tracing them out on newspapers. So they go down the newspaper, put 25 cents in and take all the newspaper, and they're taping all the patterns and shit, and they're photocopying all of the fucking filing cabinet information for our vendors and everything. Now, when they took off, he had the hard drives, he got the hard drives, he got all that shit, like all of that stuff had happened. And that's when we found, I'll just fucking say it, Mendoza. He's passed away, right?
Oh yeah, Mendoza's passed away.
He stole a bunch of he stole a whole fucking kit bag of slings out of there.
Yeah, Mendoza passed away a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he fucking had some shady shit going on too.
Well, I mean, don't talk ill of the dead, but he did have a crazy cocaine habit and a stripper for a girlfriend.
So I didn't know nothing about cocaine, but I knew he took some money fucking based on somebody's name, and they were going to
crazy cocaine habit. Don't get high on your own supply, kids.
So I didn't know anything about that. He looked really fat to be a fucking cocaine.
Well, I believe that his actual death was attributed to COVID.
Yeah, they did. That's exactly what they said.
Yeah. So, but I mean, he was
not motorcycle gang.
Not motorcycle gang that was supposed to get him. He was, in the type of shape that you would think COVID would take you, anyways.
Here's if you borrow some money from a motorcycle gang,
it never turns out the way you think it's going to turn out,
but
guys.
Why didn't it, right? Because we know this business, right?
Yeah.
He had a fucking cutting machine. He had the capacity and capability.
He had a crew.
He was not paying his bills.
Yeah,
that's why.
He had a good crew. Like the again, if you own a sew shop, you know what I'm about to say is true. He had a good crew of Mexicans. Like that, they were straightforward. The dude that was running the shop for him knew all the patterns and everything. Like, he had a good crew, but again, cocaine's a motherfucker. He wasn't paying him. He would be late on payments, and there was always an issue with what was going on with the kit. And I know because I went down there a couple times. He was getting real contracts, but when your lowest common denominator is like, are we going to get paid this week? That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's just a problem, especially when you know that the money, because it wasn't like in that scenario, it wasn't like the workers didn't know that the money was coming in. The money was coming in. It's just, what was he doing with it? And
that's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point. The money's there.
The money's there. Yes, if you want a sew shop, you have to have Mexicans.
It's
just you have to have Mexicans.
We have a fucking great crew.
But
there's only. I need fucking 100 times.
I'm going to tell you the fallacy. That most people in YouTube world think that you could get a sewing machine and you could make a fucking drop leg holster and be happy about it. First off, John has been doing this for 100 years, like literally 100 years, and not like a hobby. Like every time I went down to John's house in Tierra Santa, he was working like Kunta Kinte. Like he was in there sewing. And it's easy. I don't want to say it's easy because it's not easy, because I tried it one time. I made a fucking holster. I thought I can make a drop leg holster for my pistol, and John let me do it and gave me all the patterns and showed me how to do it and showed me what I was fucking up. And it probably took me, realistically, I bet it took me 20 hours to make the fucking thing. And I made it. I didn't make 100. And that's what John was doing, making 100. It's easy to make fucking one thing. But once you have to scale it up to the kind of production that he's running around here,
we did 1,000.
Fuck you.
We did 1,000 for Japan that first time.
Yeah, those SOCOM holsters stacked to the ceiling in the corner. Come on.
I can't find that photo. I wish I had it, man. It was all the way to the ceiling.
Stacked to the ceiling of SOCOM. But I mean, that's just one product. And the product line that John has is, I don't know, what do you think? 500?
We have 14,000 part numbers just in EDC belts.
Yeah, I mean, the product line is ridiculous. And he's not even making all the stuff he used to make.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's easy to think that you're going to steal a pattern, get your mom's sewing machine out, get in the garage, buy you some material, and make a fucking chest rig. You're not going to make 100 chest rigs.
So like everybody that got involved, anybody with Chris, everything's great in the beginning with Chris, but Reardon was building stuff for Chris and had some falling out. So Rick starts building shit out of his garage on Camp Pendleton, and he starts making money, right? It's easy to take the orders, and then he goes and buys 2 jet skis and a trailer.
That's usually what happens.
And we had all these Marines coming in the shop right as everybody's about to deploy. All these kids are coming in the shop, and they're like, man, I ordered a rucksack from Rick Reardon, and he hasn't delivered it, and now he's getting deployed. Like, we don't know what to do. Can you build rucksacks? Will you build these? So then guys started bringing in Rick's stuff, and he's like, hey, I bought this from your shop. I'm like, no, you did not buy this from this shop. You bought this from, this isn't our shit. And that was the same time, too, BDS had a bunch of shit early on. And
is this post? Is this?
This was right after I came home.
When you came home, yeah.
We had
gotcha.
We had
because I know BDS was making SOE.
So I don't know where it was coming
kit.
from. Yeah. The padding that they were putting in the shoulder pads was dish towels.
Yeah.
It was literally terry cloth dish towel. We had some big John Kelly, big huge fucking breacher from Team 3. I think he was 3 or 7. And he had this kit, and he's like, hey, can you fix this? And when we opened it up, there was fucking dish towels in it. And that's how we started building all the SEAL team stuff again. When we came back, we were building all that shit out of Mom's garage. But it's just a fucking mess, man. Everybody, it's easy to start the business, but then when you have to do the work, nobody wants to do the work. And that's what our video today is going to be about when we talk just in front of the camera. It's just people think they have it so hard, and they have no fucking calibration as to what hard is. They have no fucking clue. And it's just one step after the other. Yeah. Like, how do you get to the top of that fucking mountain with a fucking phone pole?
You got to keep moving forward.
You just keep fucking moving.
Keep moving forward.
You just keep going, man.
Find something you like to do and just fucking Don't stop.
Yeah, like
Just don't stop.
we'd go out off roading and shit, and we would literally leave to go off roading, and head one direction and end up a state over. Like we would leave and it'd be fucking 90 degrees, and we'd end up in snow. Like that happened all the time. But when we get home, we'd be building shit. Like we were building stuff for the Blazer. We'd be out fucking skiing, and I'd be building. As soon as I got home, I'd build some way to carry the skis.
I am going to tell you that John is lying. He's not telling the truth. I'm going to tell you how it really went. It went like this. This is exactly how it went. For John specifically in those days, it was work. Let's shoot a gun. Work. Hey, we're going to drive to the mountain. Work. There was a lot of cool shit that happened, but the reality is he put in his hours. He put in his time. And the truth of the matter is, if you went, he's not lying. If we got in the fucking truck because John just wanted to drive somewhere and we drove for 12 hours, came home, I would be like, all right, man, I'm going to go home. And John would be like, okay, I'm going in the garage. I got to sew these fucking rigs for SEAL Team boo. And he would be in there all night. I mean, he put in the work. And I think the cool, I don't know if it's the cool, but the good thing for John is he was putting the work in a weird military time frame. So when John started making his gear, it was in a world where the military was still using shit from Vietnam, and that stuff was getting old and it was falling apart. And so everybody was like, I need something that will last. Like I need something that's not going to fall apart in a weekend. So the reality is every piece of his kit, you're not going to find any mag pouch, or even if you go back to the fucking early 90s, like I guarantee you, I have a rig that he built for me in 93 and it still looks brand new and I've used the shit out of it. You're not going to find any of that gear that's not over-engineered. Like it's bulletproof. The only way you could make better gear is if you started making it out of Kevlar. Now,
that's not better though.
We've come full circle, and the ninjas don't want bulletproof gear anymore. They want gear that just fucking melts in a weekend because it's so light. But still, eventually everybody's going to come back around and they're going to be like, man, I would much rather have the same piece of gear every time I go out to know where everything is at and all that bullshit.
If you ever have to defend your country, if U.S. citizens have to come together, that's the gear you're going to want.
Yeah, you're going to want the gun you're going to want the gear that's going to, when the war is over in 4 years, you're still wearing the same mag pouches. You still got the same kit because that's what you're going to be best at manipulating anyways. Now I don't carry that chest rig anymore because,
Would you sell it?
17 mags is a lot of mags.
Would you sell it?
Oh no. I'm a weirdo like that though.
What if somebody would give you $5,000 for it?
Okay, first off,
I'll bet you could get 10.
No, but I would say this: the person that's going to offer me $5,000, like if maybe somebody would offer that much money in the SOE world, but that person's not going to use that gear.
No,
and so why would I sell it? I mean, I'm not using it, but still, I just feel like if I was gonna sell it, I would want somebody to use it. I would want them to be out fucking using it. And you're not gonna. Well, maybe we probably know some Middle Eastern gentlemen that would pay $5,000 and then go out and roll around in the sand in it. But it's the wrong color. It's woodland.
The stuff still changes hands at ridiculous amounts.
I mean,
of money.
Here's the thing: if John Willis ever does what I've told him to do, because he's the avid collector, if he ever opens the John Willis Mummy Museum and Alligator Head Collection facility, I will give him that rig so he can hang it up in the museum. But not, I don't think I would sell it.
I'm just curious. There's dudes that would buy it.
I'm sure there is. I mean, again, there's literally nothing wrong with that piece of kit. There's not a stitch broke. There's nothing. Might be a little dirty, but that's it.
So I got a ton more shit to say, but we're 2 hours, 16 minutes in.
This. We better hold off for episode 10, because if we tell you everything now, you're not going to come back.
All right, so hope you had some entertainment, education, value from this. If you did, we just ask that you tell somebody about it. It costs $1. If you're listening to this, you paid $1 to be able to hear it. It's $1 a month. There's a ton of other shit that you get to hear for $1 a month. Leave them with some hope.
Hope. Everything's
Give them something actionable.
Everything's not as bad as we think it is. Something actionable. Learn some technology. Like I've been trying to learn how to use the Cash App.
Have you moved any of your money out of Cash App?
It's still languishing in Cash App hell.
You should have quite the pool there.
But I just recently, well, when I went to our doctor,
Yes.
I asked
We need to have that conversation.
I asked the young secretary, I'm like, do you guys take Cash App? Because I don't know how to do any Cash App. She's like, oh yeah, we do that. All you need is the number off your thing. And I'm like, I don't have a number. And I'm showing it to her, all the thing. I go, I don't have any numbers. I just have this thing. And she's like, oh, here, you got to just push this button, and then push this button, and then the shit miraculously appeared. And
Yep.
So yeah, learn some technology. Don't be afraid. It can't hurt you. Everything's not as bad as it can be. Just try and be a little more self-reliant. That's the key. Be more self-reliant. If you're the type of person that's thinking that the government's going to help you and save you, they're not. I mean, the reality is they don't even have the capability to do it. It's your local community. Like, if something really happens, it's going to be your local community. So make a friend in your neighbor if you can. I know some neighbors aren't worth making friends with, but, attempt to create a community where you don't have to worry as much about what happens in New York City. Because the reality is it doesn't affect us at all. Like even, I said California is this big empire. It's one of the biggest economies in the world, one of, but it doesn't affect us. Like it doesn't really affect what goes on out here. It doesn't matter how many terrible films Disney makes or how many terrible films Hollywood makes. It doesn't really affect us. So,
but you motherfuckers keep taking your kids to Disneyland.
Yeah, don't go to Disneyland anymore.
Stop spending money with people that hate you
or want to destroy your foundation in your family, because that's the most important thing. No matter what, your job, your fucking your bitchin' car or whatever won't matter when you are laying on your deathbed. It's going to be your family. And I've seen a bunch of funerals, and there's nothing worse than having to do honors at a funeral where there's nobody at. So, that's a dude that took his job too seriously. Think about your family, think about your friends, and just make yourself a little community. I mean, it's not hard. You would
find a community. You would
be more. It's actually pretty interesting how much everybody is alike, not different.
Well, I mean, Self-Reliance Festival, we had 650 people here. People come here. I like to say California because it's so far away, right? People come here from California, meet each other, and they live 15 minutes away from each other.
Yeah. So just,
remember, your government's not for you.
Build a better community.
Your government is against you. Think about that. They will come after you like bootlegging prohibition for selling raw unpasteurized milk.
Yes.
But they'll feed your kids Flintstones vitamins, right? And they'll make it legal for Flintstones vitamins. The B12 in Flintstones vitamins that your kids are eating is cyanide based. Cyanide, the poison, it's in your kids' vitamins. The government is designed to keep you down. If it's good for you, they want to take it away and penalize you. And if it keeps you under their thumb, then they're all about that, right? Just realize that. So build something of your own and community, like Jeff said, so that we no longer mind because they no longer matter.
Yeah, get yourself some chickens.